joined by the one and only Noxious. How are you feeling today? You ready for some Hearthstone action?
Yeah, I feel like I woke up too recently, but I did catch up on all the classes and all the players that are going to be playing today. I casted the most recent games that were played in the
Yeah,
in the league, and so some of those players I've already seen some of their decks, although I can't quite remember exactly the cards in them since the metagame has been shifting so much.
I do believe they get to resubmit decks for this stage of the tournament. If you guys are unfamiliar, the StarLadder and iLeague tournament is one that runs over, quite a series of weeks. At this stage, today and tomorrow, we'll be covering the last chance side of the tournament. So going into the tournament, many players divided into groups. The players that did very well in the groups have already qualified. In fact, I can mention who that is. So for the final stage of the tournament, I believe it's Surrender Dog, Kalento, and Amaz have already secured positions in the top six. And we have Trump, Dice, Cipher, Kranich, Xixo, and Strifecrow playing today. Hoj, Orange, Nyria, Stan Stifka, Life Coach, and Franker Z Jab playing today.
Frank is
I
EJ.
was just reading
I think that's a
yeah,
copy
I was
paste.
reading the battle tags there. All right. Anyway,
Sure.
so we have quite a lineup, and out of all those players, two of those in the end of our last chance tournament will secure spots in the final six. The final six players will be playing in Minsk later on in January, I believe, in a live tournament. And they're playing for quite a bit of money there, but today and tomorrow they're just basically on their last limb trying to stay alive. But it should be pretty interesting. We're going to have to see after League of Explorers what these players think is tournament worthy.
Yeah.
Now, what would you guess is going to come from our players? You were mentioning before we had it open today that you think we might be seeing some Shaman, some aggro Shaman, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a strong deck right now. Like, I remember when people used to complain about Face Hunter, and one of the things about Face Hunter that people don't always realize is that every other face deck in the game actually races Face Hunter better.
Hmm.
You can race a Face Hunter with your own face deck. The issue is you lose against everything else. Except now Shaman comes in, and not only does it do face damage better than Face Hunter, but it's also pretty consistent against the rest of the field, which wasn't the case just recently, and that's just because of a small inclusion with the Tunnel Trog. It's and the Elemental Destruction in some lists. We saw
Hmm.
Xixo play that because like a better Lightning Storm in a deck that desperately needs like an AOE at some point. So it really works out, and I'm surprised at how much of it we've seen.
Well, yeah, it's definitely been one of the decks to take some hold on the meta since the League of Explorers expansion. It should be pretty interesting to see. Basically, what I'm used to from tournaments is shamans just drawing no early game and double lava burst, and that just goes absolutely nowhere. So
Yeah.
even though the deck is a lot more consistent, there is still quite a lot of inconsistency in Hearthstone, which is why we're here today. I mean, we want to give players a chance and another chance in this side of the tournament to prove themselves. Hearthstone's a game where the better player wins a good portion of the time, but
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to figure that out. So hopefully, after this part of the tournament, we'll have the top six, truly the top six, moving on to the final stage.
Yeah,
So.
so Cypher's playing first versus
Mhm.
Xixo. Cypher was in the first StarLadder LAN event that he attended. He got there really by the skin of his teeth because other players couldn't attend and he had to sub in for them. So he felt like it was a really lucky thing for him last time. We'll see if he can make it out of the last chance qualifier. I think is pretty tough because it's still stacked with great players. You know, if Cypher wins against Xixo, he still has to go up against Dice, and then either Strifecrow, Kranich, or Trump, all of which are really solid players. So it's going to be a really rough ride. And Xixo wants this win after what happened to Insomnia. He really had an unlucky run of games with exactly what you said. You know, Shaman drawing completely dead.
Well, that does happen. When it comes to my personal enjoyment out of watching these tournaments, I really don't mind when that happens. What we hate to see is normal RNG. We want to see outstanding RNG or outstandingly awful RNG. We want to see the
Right.
maximum highs and the lowest of lows occur on the tournament side, at least from an entertainment perspective, which of course is the
Yeah.
most important one.
And would you say, Crib, that that is why you don't play competitively and rather you just sit back and enjoy the highs and the lows just to not have to immerse yourself into it and have too much on the line?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know. I feel like for many people right now, I think Paladin is considered still top tier. The new modifications that have been made to some of these secret lists make them even more late game, right? Like they have Tyrion, they have already, they're playing Lothevs, Challengers, Doctor Boom, and some of
Yeah.
them are starting to sprinkle in like Arc Thief or Falm or Ragnaros in it, which is just completely ridiculous. Because you start seeing Priest come back with a lot of control tools. And sure, you can entomb my Tyrion, but what about this Arc Thief or Falm? Do you have an answer for that one? So it's like there's almost nothing now that you don't curve well with as a secret pally, and it's really scary.
Yeah, Secret Paladins has been a deck that just hasn't really left since TGT introduced the Mysterious Challenger, and there's been a lot of versions then, and the versions are continuing to evolve with League of Explorers. I think it's still considered by most to be the top deck, even though, there's always, this like super aggro Shaman, there's like this Reno Warlock, there's this deck that, just came up the other day that's now suddenly number one in some people's eyes. But Secret Paladin, when it falls to like number three, and then next week it's
Yeah,
back to number one. So it has been, one of those like super super strong decks that just
yeah.
can't really leave. I haven't personally seen the Rafam version. I am excited to see that, but at least the Ragnaros version makes a lot of sense. With Secret Paladin, I think the main weakness of Secret Paladin is that it's sometimes a little bit tricky to finish off your opponent. You usually have a ton of small minions, which means that you probably can, if you wish, clear out most of the small minions from your opponent. And that's basically the ideal situation for Ragnaros. That's largely why I think Ragnaros hasn't been showing up in too many decks these days, because it's very difficult for a deck to actually set that up. It's very difficult to remove all the small threats off the board and have only prime Ragnaros targets left, which was very, very different, in the earlier days of Hearthstone.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny too because we don't have that many BGH targets now. With Handlock gone, I don't say necessarily completely gone. You do see, I mean, double BGH in Malagos Warlock. They play abusive sergeants, but for the most part, there are no decks right now that really run two BGH targets. And so when you start, dropping Doctor Boom into Tyrion or into Ragnaros or into Rafam, suddenly that big body is going to stick around, right? Unless there's some kind of crazy light bomb, a Shadow Word Death, like Priest
Yeah.
with the exact answers. It's pretty tricky, and it's just one of those things where Rogue is able to deal with a few threats, but sapping Doctor Boom never feels good, and sapping Ragnaros never feels good. Like, these two are just horrible.
Sap and Ragnaros might feel all right.
Ah,
I feel like sapping
sure.
Ragnaros, even though it's still a really big problem that's probably coming down, that it buys you more than one turn, because usually when you sap, you like push a high tempo play, and it usually requires like a board clear or like a Lotheb to prevent dying the next turn. So
Right.
it feels like with Ragnaros, it's still a good sap target because you get more than one turn delay on the card. But yeah, you're right. You're right. There's a lot of feels bad man sap targets. Um, Another deck I really haven't seen too much, just personally, is this Miracle Rogue that's been coming up with the Tomb Pillager, and most players who are in tournaments who have done well, who are on teams, who are the players that you guys see again and again. These guys are from the earlier days of Hearthstone. I think every single one of them has mastered the original Miracle Rogue, and with the Tomb Pillager Miracle Rogue being quite successful and playing out basically exactly the same way. I'd be really eager to see some Miracle Rogue play in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think the new version is a lot more difficult to play than the older
Mm.
ones. I don't know if you've played it at all or tried it yourself, but it's
No,
really
I'm
touchy.
not
Like,
much
there's
of a Miracle
so
Rogue
many
player.
mistakes
Hmm.
you can make just because that extra coin you get off the Tomb Pillager. There's a billion moments to use it that you want to use it, but there's really only one that's going to win the game, and that's usually when you wait long enough to get like a crazy push. But it gets really scary when you might just be dead to what 3, 4 cards in the opponent's deck and you can't use the coin because you can't win if you do. Like there's so many little plays like this, and I think the return of Miracle Rogue as it is now is a really healthy one, right? Compared to the older version, which might have been a bit overtuned to say the least. It's just that with Malagos we saw Super JJ climb with the oil miracles
Yeah,
as
I
well.
heard
There's
about
like a
that.
really nice mix of them. It's like there's so many variants of it right now.
It's true, but at the same time, we have to consider the fact that the decks that players often bring to tournaments are not the ones that are the most successful with on ladder. Now, there's obviously some deviation to that.
Sure.
I feel it's kind of based on the player. Some players do exactly that. They just bring their most successful ladder decks. They pick three, and then it's like, whoa, it's Conquest. No need to worry about anything. Bring those to a tournament, and a lot of players have done well with that style of play. But some others have chosen the opposite side of play. We saw Dice in a lot of recent tournaments, just bringing that anti-aggro lineup. But I feel like that is much harder to pull off right now because a lot of the really strong decks are not aggressive decks. Even though we talked about Shaman, even though we talked about Secret Paladin, there are strong decks out there that are just not all that aggressive. A few we mentioned today, and there's like Reno Warlock, there's like Freeze Mage, there's like Reno Freeze Mage. There's a lot of these things that,
Oh man,
yeah, can
Reno
be
Freeze
very
Mage.
different from the aggressive scene that we've seen not too long ago. League of Explorers really did quite a lot to change the game and force some change out of the players who want to win.
They really did. I mean, that's what I love about the expansion. Really, is that it didn't give you any broken tools like individually. No Doctor Booms,
Yeah.
no Shredders, right?
Mhm.
But what they give you is like a bunch of playable cards which fit in some kind of framework that you have to build around most of those playables, as opposed to just slapping them into something that already works. I mean, I guess Finley is kind of a crazy example because it kind of works in the decks that had a crappy hero power for their archetype. But like, there's a
Well,
lot of cards that I'm super
true.
happy we have.
Well, here we go. We are going to kick it off. It is going to be Cipher versus Xixo in our opening match today. It seems like we have a Shaman
Oh
versus
man, Renolock.
Renolock, and we see the Stalog, which means there's going to be a Fugan in there. You generally run the Fugan and then can feel bad about running the Stalog, but should be pretty interesting. I think if the Shaman has a good opener here, it can be pretty difficult for the Warlock to do much because, I mean, you have heals in the deck, but really the only one that shuts out the game is going to be, Reno Jackson. And you really can't afford to tap much after your power play on turn 4 in this matchup, I believe.
Yeah, it's really, you're forced to slow down your tapping aggressively for Reno. Although sometimes that's kind of what you're forced to do.
Mhm.
Cipher here with the Ooze and the Zombie Chow. It doesn't look like much, but this Zombie Chow weakens at 3/4 to Hellfire range. We'll see what Xixo ends up doing with it. He might use up the Abusive with the Leper Gnome to trade into it to keep his Totem Golem healthy. It's just that with the Doomhammer being defused by the Ooze, there's a good chance that Xixo just falters afterwards because the overload is really noticeable.
Yeah, the main aspect of the Shaman deck that a lot of people quickly realize is that you have to take a lot of risks. So, with most decks, you can choose whether or not you want to play around certain cards. I feel like with the Shaman deck, the choice is already made for you. So we see here that Cipher has an excellent clear with Hellfire that Xixo, I mean, he could have prevented. He could have like rock-bitered himself to kill the Zombie Chow to save the
Oh my
Totem
god, yeah,
Golem.
sure.
But
Yeah.
there's no chance that's realistically happening in this deck, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's kind of like a very powerful deck. Struggles a little bit on consistency, but you have to really take significant gambles to actually be able to win. And a lot of those times doesn't work so well. I think this is going to be one of those times.
Well, I mean, it really depends because Xixo still has the Crackle in hand. I mean, if the Doomhammer gets defused, like we mentioned, it's going to be an issue. But now Cipher is going down to 15 and another 2. So he's going down to 13 health after the Hellfire, which means Xixo probably will feel pretty happy about the follow-ups. If, the Hunter Hero Power gets picked up, or Life Tap even. Oh, God.
You think Life
Goodness.
Tap is like the second best
The
or the
best.
first best? You think it's the best? Just
I'd say
because
it's the
you
best,
pull
yeah.
out those answers.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, Cipher here, I mean, this is where you really have to make the big decisions. You know you're dying very soon unless you make power plays, but you have nothing on the board to really begin the power play. It seems like he's going to try to curve out here with the heal bot. He knows if this isn't played this turn, it's probably played next turn. And
Yeah.
next turn he can do the Drake and the Dark Bomb for a little bit extra mana efficiency.
Or even the Sun Fury if he wants to really stay safe. But I suspect we'll see an Ooze
The
coming
Ooze,
out after
probably.
this Doomhammer.
Yep.
There's no reason you wouldn't do that. Which means Xixo could have opted to wait maybe one turn to play Doomhammer alongside Rockbiter to maximize the damage output and not risk losing it without getting 10. But I guess you really have to pin your opponent on having, maybe Harrison Jones and the Ooze in the deck. Like we've seen
Twisting
sometimes
Nether,
Iron Link
though.
and Spellbreaker. Yeah, pretty common in Reno.
Twisting Nether?
Yeah, it's like the Dread Steed shenanigans, right? Like it
Yeah.
just fits in that deck.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've seen some really. That's kind of why Reno decks are so cool. You do see a lot of these cards that
Yeah.
you don't expect, and the predictability of the deck just becomes so wild because, usually in any given deck you'd have like 17 to 19 different cards, but in
Yeah.
Reno Warlock, a lot of them just run the straight 30.
So what's nice here, Xixo is probably the first person that I saw play the Elemental Destruction in his Shaman list, and that came after the initial aggro lists were made. He started cutting, some of the fluff like Unbound Elemental and whatnot just to make room for the AOE, because he realized that's the big weakness I have is I need a Lightning Storm sometimes, but Lightning Storm is terrible. So I need to run something bigger, and since I play Lava Shock, I might as well play Destruction. So he doesn't have it here, which is unfortunate. But if he picks it up later, it could still recover the game on some level. I mean, there's no heal for Cipher right now.
Yeah, and board clears are really powerful for aggressive decks. It's something that a lot of people kind of don't really think about. If you can clear the board, stall the game, you can usually draw into more damage, just direct damage, which is especially true for this Shaman deck. But on the other hand, when you're facing an aggressive deck as like a control player, when you start taking back the game, you usually try to play everything as fast as you can. So it seems like it's really, really easy to bait one of these board clears. Well, that's a lot of damage there.
Yeah, the Lava Shock as well. It doesn't look like much, but you can start with Crackle, push it to face, and then Lava Shock immediately, then tap. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait one more turn, and he picks up the Destruction, but I'm not sure it's necessarily something you want to do now. You might do it next turn with Lava Shock. You go Crackle, Destruction.
This is a
Lava Shock.
big gamble on this juggle here. But
And
again,
did it die? It died? Oh my god, it died. No way.
the gambling deck. Oh wow. Well, we talked about how there's no heals. Well, there is there is some divine intervention here, giving him 4 HP.
That was a mistake. Xixo realized after playing the Juggler, I think, I should have played the Abusive first and then played the Juggle. He still hasn't lost, right? We've seen these games, if let's say double Elemental Destruction gets picked up, pick up another Destruction, double Destruction Lava Shock, you're still into this, right? Okay, maybe not so much.
You're at 1. And the Destruction has to hit for 5.
Yeah, there's no way that happens here.
But if it does, you can win. If Cipher draws dead and you draw another direct damage card, you could actually seal the game next turn. It does hit for 5 across the board, in fact.
That's as good as it's gonna get.
Oh, he's still dead.
Yeah, there's no way you can kill everything because the 8-3 lives. You have to hit for 6 on the Drake because you need a source of spell damage, right?
But I guess
it was one.
The Sun Fury attack into his face. Yeah, not quite enough.
Dr. Boom takes it again.
Well,
it was 4 damage. Granted, it was necessary.
It was kind of the big push, like you're the control deck. You start winning the game on like turn 7 or 8. You have to play everything. It just so happens that the Reno Warlock, especially when you draw the way that Cipher did, the creatures are just too big to level with a card like Elemental Destruction. So Yeah, it kind of worked out on that end at least. Looks like Xixo's playing another aggressive deck here. We see the Void Terror. We see some aggressive Zooey cards. Void Terror is just one of my favorite cards in the game. It's just so good. I love to play it with the egg whenever I get the chance, even though that sometimes doesn't work out too well.
Well, speaking of not working out, I think Xixo's plan to actually put on the heat himself is going to not work out, just based on the hand that Cipher's put together. Double Aspirant as a starting hand is
Do you
really
want to
obscene,
do
because, I
the
mean, he's
double?
going 3... No, you're going to play
I
just
think
the
you
one.
want
You're
to
going
innervate a Druid the Claw next turn, because
Right.
it's very unlikely for this minion to die, right? Like, the only thing that would kill it is Dark Bomb.
in Zoo.
Well, you don't know it's Zoo, but yeah.
Yeah, but you have to assume the 4/6 is likely going to live, which is...
It's
I mean,
not.
I guess there's a slight chance if you have, like, Juggler, PO.
Yeah. Well, he might
That's
do
rough.
the Imp Gang boss first, but yeah,
No, he's got to go for it for this.
gotta go for it.
Yeah.
Well, he does go for it. It's really nice that you can save that combo to Power Overwhelm and Void Terror at the same time, but usually with Zoo, you're not running any board clears, you're not running any comeback mechanics. Even though it's an aggressive deck similar to the Shaman, it's very different because you really have to be winning on the board at all times.
Alright, so we'll see Cipher go. I mean, the double Aspirant on the board right now for Xixo can't be answered immediately. So even though Cipher may be worried about, say, a second abusive, something along those lines, and starts trading, using his minions to trade, overall we can see that Xixo just has nothing as a follow-up. Like, he can kill one of those Aspirants and that's it.
That's it. Yeah, he was really looking for a Power Overwhelm there. I think a Power Overwhelm there would actually have been crushing, because he could Power Overwhelm the 1/1 and Void Terror it. But that's a one-outer. Didn't happen.
So if you're Xixo here, you just play Doomguard, kill the Aspirant. That way you deny the possibility of further ramp, or even a decent curve at all, right? Because you're forcing him back to 5 mana. And then the one thing that could come out is Druid of the Claw, Belcher at most.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't play the Doomguard, but he seems to be pretty happy about it. No, he goes to the Void Caller draw. Yeah, I don't think the Doomguard is very good, just because with Druid, you want to try to avoid your opponent ramping into 5 and 7. It just so happens that he has a Sylvanas, which really sucks.
Oh,
but,
happy feast of Wintervale. I mean, that's what Cipher says as
Right.
soon as he's about to win. That's pretty rough, man.
right, but yeah, you kind of know what I'm saying here. Like, Sylvanas is not that likely of a card. Just usually the 6 mana turn is kind of a dead one for most Druids, so just not exactly the case this time.
You know, do you think we'll ever see kind of a Reno, right? Like, it sounds ridiculous to say here, but just the ability, could you ever swap out like a lot of those 5 drops? You know, they're interchangeable. You can play a Belcher instead of Druid of the Claw, 1 Force of Nature, 1 Roar, Power of the Wild. You just like sprinkle in the Reno. Could that work? I don't know.
It's pretty difficult, right? Because if you usually end the game on a combo with that type of deck, so if you need Reno, it has to predate the combo, and if Reno has to predate the combo, it means that you can't run 2 pieces of combo.
Yeah, it's got to be the one of like combo, which means you'd have to find another way to push Savage War damage. But you know, if you sprinkle in the aggro Druid stuff, I don't know. Wow, you Force of Nature being used here. That's just trying to get the Doomguard with the wow.
Well,
I'm not sure. He's gonna steal the 2/4, I guess, then, right? Because you would attack the Doomguard to kill it and steal the Imp Gang boss.
it looks
Or
like he
not.
wants to isolate Doomguard.
Whoa, Cipher's playing very defensively. Every single time I see him play, this is pretty much what happens. I think he was expecting Mal'Ganis for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, that Void Terror is super awkward. I think if it was almost any other card, you'd kind of be okay here.
Wow, Xixo would be quick
doesn't even want to play it. Wow.
Yeah, Xixo did that at Insomnia. He basically never made it to the actual end of the game. Never.
Really? Well, I guess
Yeah,
he didn't
never.
do too well there.
Well, he did super well, but there was a guy who qualified, somebody we don't really know, not a pro player that we we recognize, and like Xixo got top decked back to back. He started his hand with double elemental destruction, double lava burst, double doom hammer, like the worst possible thing ever as aggro shaman. And his opponent curved out perfectly, starting from zombie chow all the way up to Dr. Boom as Renolock, and Xixo just threw his hands in the air, conceded, and then the next game on turn 5, I think he was already gone. It was like, oh, okay.
All right, well, Cipher's final deck, we are playing Best of 5 Conquest, of course, is Secret Paladin. Not much of a surprise there. I do expect most players to be bringing the Secret Paladin, even though actually looking at the classes, it seems it's maybe not the case.
It looks like it's probably Secret with a mid-range twist. You know, the Secret Paladin has been shifting quite a bit, and I think as we get more cards, that's going to happen more and more, where we don't even know what we're up against.
I was mostly referring to the fact I was just looking at all the classes the players brought. Paladin's maybe not the most popular. It's pretty close. It's definitely pretty popular, but I think I see more Druids than Paladins right now, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, Druid is kind of this, any metagame I can work in, because that's what I do.
All right, well, Xixo takes the lead on the board. This is basically the strength of the Paladin, but Cipher is playing a slower version here. I mean, there's often a lot of mid-range tech cards that you see a lot of variety in. Like, for instance, the Keeper of Voldemort, that's a good mid-range tech card. The Belcher is kind of a good mid-range tech card, but to see two of them in his hand already that are a little bit unusual. It might lead me to believe that maybe he's not running the Divine Favor version of this deck.
That would make a lot of sense, actually, because if you're curving that low, it's like the Ragnarok variants. The ones that play a bit of a higher curve, sometimes they sprinkle in 1 or 2 Belchers. Those tend not to have room sometimes for Divine Favor because it usually doesn't even do anything. That's a pretty good turn, though, for Cipher. Gets the Cog Hammer to kill something at least. And Xixo, for now, not with the biggest of draws.
Oh,
never mind.
That is the biggest
Never
of draws.
mind!
That is actually the biggest of draws.
Well played, he says. All right. You haven't seen the Consecration. But yeah, that's 7 damage out of 1-drops. Feels like Mana Worm.
The Consecration isn't even that effective here. I think
it kills only 2 minions. That's about it.
Yeah, I think the Keeper of Voldemort might be a little bit better because most minions that are going to be played from now on or have a decent chance to die to Consecrate anyway.
Right.
And the Keeper kind of develops the board a little bit better.
Yeah, you can curve it to Belcher as well, which slows down the... You've seen 1 Earth Shock. There's no Hex, so you're going to slow down that a little bit. So as long as you can dodge the Lava Burst, the Crackles, Keeper of Voldemort does set you up to a potential stabilization.
I just feel the plays are about as good, but I think the Keeper of Voldemort is harder to play properly against the Shaman deck later on, while the Consecrate's almost always going to be useful. So he does go for the Keeper play. That is the flexibility of the Keeper. You can play it on your own minions, and often it's how I see it played. It's still pretty good, though. I mean, if in this case he gave his minion +2/+2, and it's a 3/4 body for 4 mana, so that's... I mean, if we're talking
5/6 for 4 mana,
classic
it's like
Shattered Sun,
fighter.
that needs to be nerfed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Let's nerf Paladin a bit. All right, so looks like Xixo is doing just fine.
Yes, he is. Lots of damage being thrown out there. But the Belcher's going to work out pretty well, at least as Cipher thinks. But that Doomhammer is going to put a pretty big dent in this board.
Yeah, because the Trogs do get buffed, right? So you go Doomhammer, you attack, say, with the...
you
attack
get him
with
to
the
4, I believe. Oh, wow.
Well, that might change things up, right? Because you can just Lava Burst, Lava Shock, and then push for 11 and win, right? Yeah, it's lethal. It's better than Doomhammer because you win immediately instead of having to stagger it over 2 turns. I like when Xixo called a well played on turn 3.
Okay. Oh, he was right. He was right.
Right.
The Trogs did make a huge impact that game. When a lot of us first looked at the Trog, it seemed like a card that might not work out too well. But, in this type of deck, when you're winning and your opponent needs to get rid of things off the board, your opponent's also playing a bit of a gamble type of game. He's also going to have to try to kill usually the easiest minions to kill. And just because that 3 health they kind of sneak their way into a position where you can overload their attack up quite significantly
Yeah.
in some games, as we saw there. All right, well, it is going to be
Cipher's
Paladin
AFK.
versus Warlock. I'm sure he'll be back in just a second here. Let's talk about the matchup, though. I feel like these are two decks that really try their best to contest the board in the early game, and the opening game situation is the one that's going to dictate so much.
Yeah, I think they're both trying to accomplish the same thing, but I think Cipher's curve, the way it seemed to be a bit slower, may give him a better mid game. But if he can't seize the early game, then that just won't matter because he has no comeback mechanism. Like we see Consecration in Cypher's deck, and there's a lot of lists where you just don't see that card at all, right? In Secret Valley sometimes, but with the amount of mid game and late game he's put in, I feel like he's just surrendering all the advantage that he would have against Zoo, unless he curves out perfectly from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is a bit tougher.
Well, there is that Nerubian egg. I'm glad to see that, but no activator means that the spider comes down instead. Cipher drops the muster. It's not very good in terms of contesting the board, but the secret, I believe, is Avenge, so that changes things up a little bit.
It's a bit of a tricky spot, actually. You could just trigger the Avenge now and then sacrifice the Voidwalker into the 4/3, right? That would solve the issue right now.
Yeah, I think I like Juggler into Abusive Sergeant on the Voidwalker. The Juggle's probably 75% of the time is going to trigger that Avenge, and you can do pretty well to protect your Juggler. Looks like Xixo just wants to find out what the secret is a bit more definitively because, well, he probably has guessed it is Secret Paladin. There are other secrets beside the one Avenge in this deck. That's kind of the idea.
Would you ever just abusive coin Imp Gang Boss so that you're not as weak to Consecration? Because otherwise Light's Justice plus Consec would pop the board and then you lose everything. Maybe even the egg.
Like he is thinking about that. No, it looks like he's going for the Imp Gang Boss. The Imp Gang Boss is pretty good here because not only does it contest Consecrate, as you mentioned, but it sets up a board situation that you don't really want to deal with. So if you're a Cipher right now, it's like, yeah, I don't really want to attack into the Imp Gang Boss. I don't really want to pop the Haunted Creeper. So yeah, that just sets up a very, very good next turn for your Juggler.
Again, the Keeper of Voldemort with the +2/+2. Like, this is Pit Fighter level stats for 4 mana. That's absolutely insane.
It's better than that because you get the charge effect on the Black Knight. All right.
Welcome back. What has he been facing? I guess a lot of Reno. Tyrion also makes a lot of sense. Belcher's everywhere. Twilight Guardians. I guess that does make sense. Why haven't we seen more of this, actually, now that I think of it?
Yeah, it does have quite a few targets, and basically every version of Warlock has some flexibility on a few card slots because of their hero power. They can float a bad card or two. Probably less so in this deck because you have the discard mechanics of the Doomguard. We know that Xixo is playing much more of a Demon Zoo deck than a typical Zoo deck because he has the Void Callers for the Doomguards, but I feel that with the nature of the game being very zoo-oriented, that you so frequently just have to play the Doomguard on 5. So I feel like the Black Knight might not work out as well as it might seem in other decks, but I think in general you kind of hit it right. It is... get that bonus juggle there. It is a card that seems to be pretty effective.
It's going to be mildly annoying for Xixo to deal with. I wonder, he did pop the spider himself on the previous turn to get extra juggles. I'm guessing he was hoping to hit the Keeper of Voldemort, which he didn't in the end. But I wonder how well that panned out for him. Oh, wow. Void Caller here with the Mal'Ganis set up in hand. It's got to be probably one of his better top decks, right?
Yeah, it is, but... I mean, Cipher has the Mysterious Challenger on turn 6, which is actually going to deny that from being relevant for next turn. And in terms of immediate tempo, it's something you have to deal with right away.
Well played from Cipher. Throws down a 6/6. All right.
Yeah, it's very important to kill the 4/3 here, which is why Xixo's attack was so good. If Xixo had went face or went for the 3 attack minion, he would have been able to kill the Secret Keeper, as the weapon would have been used for that final 1 damage.
Alright, so you trigger the Avenge, you get to deny the buff from the Iron Becal, with the Iron Becal, which I kind of like. You know, it's no BGH, but it does a good chunk of work. And because you're denying so much damage, suddenly maybe Cipher is thinking about using his minions for trading after that point. It's kind of tricky, though. Would you even use the Owl this
No.
early? I mean,
I
it's
don't think
12 damage.
trading is well, I don't believe the Mysterious Challenger is doing any trades anytime soon, at least.
No? Alright. I trust in you, Crip. There's a lot of damage, though, because with the Blessing of Kings, he's starting to push, what, 15 damage this turn alone, which means there's no life tabs for Cipher that feel good ever again.
Yeah.
But the Mal'Ganis...
His thing is the Mal'Ganis makes an impact on the turn after, and that's usually where you might be able to deal with it anyway. So, yeah, this is... Oh, man, that is rough. That is really, really rough.
Yeah, because Mal'Ganis here comes out, like, Noble Sacrifice triggers on the Void Walk and the Void Caller, and then...
Whoa, Dr.
Oh.
Seven! Nope, not today. Looks like
Still
this is going to
dead.
be match point for Cipher, and it is. Cipher is going to take the first match of the night. He
Yeah.
still has quite the journey, though. I believe Cipher has advanced into the next stage, and the next
Dice, yeah.
stage he has to beat Thyssen, and that's going to be not that easy of a thing to accomplish. But overall, the games so far have kicked off in a very aggressive fashion. Xixo bringing just a lot of aggressive decks, but not really working out. I feel like he just kind of got the bad end of a dice roll, honestly.